For those of you who have been here before, welcome back, and I'm glad that you're here again. We're going to be making this cool interactive timeline. And the reason why we wanted to do this project with the timeline is because, one, visualizing data is one of the cooler things that you can do with your coding ability, and it always impresses people, right? When you're hunting for a job, or if you're a go-getter and you want to impress someone at your workplace, right? Then being able to show off visualized data is a really cool way, because a lot of people, when they look at code, they'll be like, oh yeah, that's code. I don't really know what's so great about this, right? But when you do that cool presentation to an HR person interviewing you for your first coding job, or your CEO, and be like, hey, look at all this sales data and how pretty it looks, then it's a cool way to show off your skills, right? I always recommend people, when they're looking for their first coding job or trying to break into the industry, make something that's cool and visual like this. So this is definitely a good project to do. And also, it's a good fit for Kintone as well. We have our database values, like president's name, what party they were, what color that party should be. And it's all saved in a database, and today we're going to practice fetching from the database, displaying it in a React app, and all kinds of cool stuff. If that sounds interesting to you, then that's awesome. So we need to make a database. This time, then after we get our database, we have to connect our database to our React app, right? Otherwise, they won't know that they exist. On the database end, Kintone is a low-code, no-code database. You can make databases without knowing any code at all and make apps. For the JavaScript part, I try to go through it pretty slow. Right here, we have this link to our repo like that. We have here the Kintone Workshops GitHub repository. This is where all of our code exists, ready for us to work on. Click on this code button. If you do it from the command line, that's totally cool. I am a command line kind of person. So in my /code/workshops, or whatever folder you want to be, I just paste that GitHub repo clone, and it'll copy and create this awesome code repository for me right here. It's always nice to do this live, just because that way if there are errors, then we can fix it together. And in our README down here in our troubleshooting, which is absolutely fantastic, by the way, and we have all the different kind of troubleshooting things that you might run into, and how to actually complete. We have the completed code for this workshop is here, so you don't even have to code it if you don't want to. So now that we've cloned this lines generator amCharts repository, we need to change directories, cd, change directories, timeline generator amCharts, like that. And now we are in our project repository. Once you're in here, we've downloaded our code, right? But we need to tell our computer as well, we have this list of what's called dependencies, right? These dependencies are things that need to be installed separately from our code that do all kinds of cool things. They're called packages, right? And we have a couple packages in here like React. So we need to tell our project, hey, we need to install React to work in this little environment that we've created. The way that we do that, and you'll usually do this after you download anything from GitHub, npm install. Right there. You might see other tools like yarn install sometimes. They're all the same, really, like that. And when you put npm install like that, it'll go through all your packages, make sure that they all depend on each other properly, and then work together and install it, which is awesome. So we've installed our packages right here, and if you want to open up the code in your favorite IDE, some people use VS Code, some people use Notepad, some people use Vim. I'm just going to do VS Code right here because that's what installed on my work computer. And we have here our code repository all set up and ready to go. I am behind trying to set it up, but it's fine. Yeah, like I said, it's hard. It's very hard to keep track with some random person just talking and then trying to type as well. If you don't have two monitors, I highly recommend having two monitors. That changed my life when I was studying coding from YouTube, is watch. Yeah. All right, here we have our code repository, right? We're going to be basically uploading some custom JavaScript into our Kintone database later. And don't worry if you don't know what that means yet. You'll start to understand it. But one tool that we use to do that we provide is called the Kintone Customize Uploader. And what that does is you tell it what, your Kintone database, where it is, your username, password, and stuff like that. And then you run it and it uploads the JavaScript for you. You can do it manually as well, but it makes this workshop move a lot faster, like that, if you install the Kintone Customize Uploader. So if you have not yet npm install global right here, that's what the -g is for, the Kintone Customize Uploader. And what that'll do when you install it is later on when we're running and trying to connect our database to our code, it will basically make that a lot faster. So npm install -g Kintone customize uploader. Us, the Kintone Corporation, provides this tool for free. It is really just a simple like upload tool. I always like to start out how to think about recreating apps as a programmer, right? And once you start to get into programming, it helps to be able to like break them down logically. So what we're going to make today, you can see this cool timeline, right? And so if I was some kind of like programmer and I wanted to recreate this app, yeah, it looks like a fancy timeline, right? I can see lots of colors and lots of pins. But thinking about data structure is a very important skill. And so looking at this, let's break it down into parts, right? So I see this long snaky line. So I probably want some kind of like package or some kind of tool to make that for me. We're not going to hand code out like this like snake line, right? That's silly and it's a waste of time. Like that. What I see is I see a bunch of presidents, US presidents, by the way. So sorry if you're not familiar with them. Trust me, I'm American too, but I don't know most of them. So it's fine. And it seems like here up the top, we have the first president, George Washington, right? So we have their name. So we're going to need to store their name somewhere in our database, right? It's a big hint. We're going to store a name somewhere. They have positions on this timeline, as you can see right here, right? So it tells like when they started being president, maybe, and when they stopped being president. So we're going to need to store some dates in our database, and we're going to need to be able to fetch those dates and parse them. Let's see, what else? I see some colors. Why are there colors on our timeline as well? So we're probably going to need to store like what party. I'm assuming blue is Democrat and red is Republican and green is random old parties like the Federalists and stuff like that. So we're going to probably need to store like for each president, like what party were they a part of and stuff like that as well. So looking at that in our database, it seems like we'll need like a string place for our name like that. We're going to need some date fields in order to store date times. And we're going to need some random strings, I assume, for party, Republican, Democrat. That's how I would break this down. We need to be able to place them one at a time or loop through all of our presidents from our database and then apply them to a timeline like that. And being able to just to break things down verbally is a very useful skill, in my opinion. So definitely practice that. Even if you have to talk to yourself or think about it yourself, like in front of your computer at home, alone in the dark. I used to do that too. It's pretty cool. We've cloned our GitHub. We need to set up our web database, and then we're going to connect it to our web database in our React app using a .m file like that. And I always debate about which one to go through first. I think we're going to create our Kintone first, and then we're going to connect it to our React app. The Kintone is an online web database and work share platform like that. It's used for teams of people that are like working together that don't know how to code and can make apps. I also use it for my own personal project as just a simple web database. Other web databases might be things like Firebase. You see probably Firebase a lot, made by Google. SUBDOMAIN, which is like an open source version of that. There's all kinds of different web databases, right? If you're just learning to code, you probably made databases locally, like with MySQL, Postgres, and stuff like that, right? Or things like this. Kintone have a free tier. We are actually giving out free Kintone web databases today, and I'll talk about that. But it is really free. Free as in free beer, in that we are just giving away these web databases, and as long as you don't like spam them, then it'll never cost you money, and it never goes bad. It's actually quite a good deal if you're learning to code, just by the way. But the advantages of web databases, right? Like one, it's all backed up in the cloud like that. And so you don't have to like go in and create a database like, okay, first I have to create a MySQL database, and then I got to make I have to make a database, and I have to make tables, and then I have to fill out the rows and stuff like that. You don't really have to do that with a web database. And with Kintone, you can make a database that is type safe, as in you can't put number data into the string field. It'll automatically get converted into a string, for example. Or you can't put like hello world into the date field. It'll reject that, right? So it's type safe, for example. And also like for queries like that, you can do queries. Yes, but you can do queries, and you can organize how you get the data. But it just makes it really easy to fetch that data via an API. It works wherever you go like that. And it's a really good skill to have. So even when you have a local database, like a MySQL database as well, when I was working at a coding startup a couple of years ago, we had our databases, but they were on a separate server anyways, because we had like a data hosting server, and then our apps would always go get the data from there and then come back. Even if it was all like quote unquote local and not online, it is still like you're going to be fetching data no matter what you do. That's just the reality like that. So are we allowed to download data from this web data, import it into a local database like Postgres? So you can download any data from Kintone as a CSV file. That's totally doable. You can export it as JSON, whatever you need to do. It's totally doable. I'm skipping over all this other stuff about Kintone. I'll talk about it later, but just nerding out about databases, right? What's cool about Kintone as well is it also has data, but it also has conversations about that data in the same place, right? And what I mean by that is you have like data, and this is our Kintone visualization of a row in a database, right? So this could be like customer name, customer address, customer email database. And then you have this data in one place and you don't have to talk about that data in another place. For example, like if you're working in a tech startup, you'll often have a bunch of files or data stored somewhere, and then you'll be talking on Slack about that data. And your boss will be like, hey, can you edit customer 543's address? And you're like, okay, where are they? And then you have to go find out like what file that is or wherever it might be. Kintone combines those two, which I think is cool, where you can talk about data in the place where the data is. You can mention people like at Genji. And you can pass work around and stuff like that and make apps that basically anybody can edit like that without knowing code. If you get a job at a like big tech company, that you're going to be on a team of developers and everyone's going to know how to code and blah, blah, blah. You can make whatever you want. A lot of people's first tech jobs, and especially when you're just getting into the industry and you have no experience, right? You're going to be at a smaller company. You might be like one of 2 or 3 devs, right? And then you have 60 sales representatives that you need to like manage with code. And what Kintone does is like you as one developer can edit these apps with JavaScript, and you can radically change these 60 sales reps like experience and how they manage data. There are entire companies over in Japan that they exist just by building on top of Kintone, like customizing it and selling it to third parties. We have all kinds of cool tools and stuff. You can do anything in Kintone. Here we have more data visualization right here on the left. You can make Space Invaders if you want. JavaScript is JavaScript, and you can use it anywhere. And if you're like, you know what, that's cool that you like Kintone, you want to use Kintone. I have a preferred database like Firebase, something like that. The actual concepts behind what we're doing are almost exactly the same. The wording might change a little bit, like you might have to do firebase.upload, something like that. But it's really all pretty universal. So that's why it's definitely cool if you don't want to use Kintone like that. It just makes life easier. But you do you, right? Cool. So we're going to create a Kintone database right now. There we go. If you go to kintone.dev and you click on the link that's coming in the chat right here, you will see this developer license registration form like that. And you can use this to sign up for your Kintone subdomain. Now, what is a subdomain? It's like this one up here. This is my dev events subdomain, devevents.kintone.com. I wish I could make the text bigger, but expanding text doesn't make this part bigger for whatever reason. And so basically, if by applying for this, you get this Kintone subdomain. And this subdomain is where you can create databases to use in your projects. So when you sign up for this, why we have some of this data in here is just for these workshops. We just want to know what kind of people are using Kintone, and we use this internally. Do put in a valid email like that. And right here, the part that a lot of people get confused about is what is your subdomain, right? This is going to be, as you can see, I did a lot of testing when I made this form. This is going to be what comes before the .kintone. So like up here, my subdomain is devevents.kintone.com. So if you type in dev events, it'll tell you that it's already taken, first of all. Yeah, it's not available. But that's what will appear right there. So like I have a personal one, like sean.kintone.com, that I use for not work related. And then once you've signed up for your account, like that is your database to use. And so yeah, we're going to be doing some API work and stuff like that, but definitely hack around with it and make something cool. It's totally doable. And it's a really good learning tool, in my opinion. When you get the email like that, you'll click activate now and it'll take you to your subdomain.kintone.com and ask you to set a password. Set a nice strong password like pass. That's a really good one, right? Or pass123. And then log in. Your login name will be your email that you supplied to us as well. And then when you do log into Kintone, I have a lot of slides here about what to do, but we're going to do this live together, actually. And we're going to create our database app together and import it from a CSV because I don't want to hand type lots of US presidents. The copy of the slides are included in the GitHub repository if you cloned that. So you can get that as well. Once you log in to your Kintone, you're going to see like this portal right here, and then mine has like some other stuff on the side, like talking spaces where I chat about stuff with my friends. and a bunch of different apps for things. Ooh, here's a cool one, a little hint for next time, by the way. Woohoo, very trendy. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new app, okay? And this time we have a lot of data that we want to import because, like I said before, like we have all these 50-something presidents' names or something like that. And so if you see this presidents.csv in your code base, right? A CSV file is just an Excel file, right? And Excel files are just databases, really. And you can see like George Washington from 1789 to 1797. George Washington was president for 10 years. That's crazy. A Wikipedia link and some images and stuff like that, right? So we're going to actually just import this into Kintone and it'll make our database for us. Yeah, CSV is way more easy to use and smaller than Excel. Excel has a bunch of extra junk data. And so the way that you make databases or in Kintone is they're called apps because I guess this is a trendy thing to say. You click this plus sign right over here and it'll say, okay, how to create a new app. You can create it from scratch, create it from Excel, create it from CSV. We have templates, you can copy apps, stuff like that. This time we are going to be creating from a CSV file, that presidents.csv. So go ahead and click on create from CSV. Create a CSV, step 1 out of 3. Okay, continue. Prepare a CSV file. So open the CSV file and format the contents accordingly. CSV files are very picky. And if you open them in Excel, and then you click save, sometimes Excel will change it to a .xlsl or whatever file for you because it's like, why are you keeping this as a CSV? So definitely make sure that you didn't like accidentally save over it, right, as a Excel file. Keep it as a .csv and make sure that it didn't change the contents or anything like that because sometimes Excel will try and format things for you automatically if you open it. Just check them all. But make sure that you follow these rules if you're going to be importing data in the future like that. Basically, don't import 100,000 row Excel files all at once into Kintone, please. That's all it says, really. Continue to the upload screen and then create a Kintone app by importing a CSV file. So there you go. And we'll see right here in our Kintone generator, timeline generator, repository, and you can see the presidents.csv file right there. And then it'll preview it, right? So it'll say, hey, your data's kind of look like this, and just make sure that everything is looking okay. But we're going to change one thing with how our database is imported. You can see like the different kinds of ways that Kintone parsed our data for us. Dates are dates, yeah, first name is text, last name in text. Party. Right here, party is a text value. We are actually going to change this to a drop-down button. And the reason is because the party is actually in our app. You can select which party it is. It's okay if it's like a text value. You would have to change the code just a little bit to make it work. But the drop-down allows you like basically to edit. Actually, Taft was a Republican. Thank you very much. You can change that if you really want to. So change party to drop-down real quick, and then click convert. And this is, it's an Excel file pretty much, right? All data is just tables and rows and columns, right? So you don't need to like type in queries and create tables and rows and columns yourself. In our app, so if you click this little cog up in the top, you can edit the app if you ever need to. And this is why Kintone is so cool. If I wanted to add like a favorite food field, I could add this column to my database. I'm just going to say apples. And I could save that right there. And then every president would then have a favorite food field that I could add and get to from later as well. We don't need our president's favorite food this time, so I'm going to delete it, but it's pretty cool. And in our app, though, we need to do a couple of things in order to get set up. And what we need to do is we need to basically, when you first view your app, you're going to see that it is on this all records view right here. And we want to basically say, hey, Kintone, don't display all the data like this in tables and rows, or rows and columns. Please actually display our cool timeline chart with its cool snake pattern, right? And so what we need to do is create what's called a custom view. And I've named mine timeline here, but how you create it is you go to this cogwheel right at the top, and we have like our basic view. I'm just gonna make a new view. I've already made one just because I was preparing for this workshop. If you click the plus button up here, you can create a new view, and we'll just call it my custom view, or you can call it timeline view or chart view or whatever you want to do, right? It's just a name for your own purposes. And then what you're going to do is click custom view right here. And when you click custom view, you're telling like Kintone, like, hey, I'm going to be injecting JavaScript into this page like that, so just let me do that. And there's two things that you need to do here after you've clicked custom view. You need to first copy this view ID. You need to copy the view ID and save it, because we're going to be putting that into our code later, and that's how we connect our base to our React app that we'll be making later. So we have our view ID right here, and that's what we're going to put into our code to tell our React, hey, upload your JavaScript to this view in this app, right? And then the second thing that you need to do is in this HTML code, we need to create a space for our React app to live in. What we're going to be doing is injecting our React code into this HTML div that we're going to be creating right here. So if you missed it where I am, right there, I'll go back one more time. If in your app that you have uploaded, your President's app, click on the cogwheel, and click on Views, and then click plus to create a new view. My new view, click custom view, remember that view ID, copy paste, and then right here we need to create a space for our React app to live in. So you need to create a empty HTML div with an ID of root. And if you look at React apps, often you'll actually see this in a lot of like React template apps. So under HTML code, you click that, type this in, div ID is equal to root, just copy and paste it in there. And that is like where we're going to be like injecting our React app into, basically. Once that's all done, make sure that you click save, and then you click update app. Always click update app. I don't know, when I was first getting started, like I would always forget to update the app. And you should be taken to this new view, and it'll have nothing in it, which is fine because we haven't uploaded our JavaScript yet. But in this 5 to 10 minutes that it took doing this, basically now you have a web database that you are type safe like that, so you can't like mess with the data in weird ways. I can't put like the number 12 into William Tapp's name. And also, if you wanted to set up an API token based authentication, you could definitely do that. We've just finished basically like step 2 of setting up our database with our custom view. And now what we need to do is we need to connect our code to our database and get them talking to each other, right? So if everyone's ready, go ahead and scroll on over to your code, and in your editor, you're going to see like all this code. And if you click on this .m.example file, right? For those of you who are more advanced programmers like that, just to space out for the next minute or two or get something to eat a donut. What is a .env file? What is an environment file? And why is it important? So this is where it is usually like very common practice to keep secret information or non-front-facing, user-facing information, right? And what that means is I don't want people knowing my password or my API token, right? Because then they could copy it and rack up a bunch of charges on my Google Maps API account, which did happen to me once. And so what we do is we keep them in .env files like that. And when you are uploading your projects or your code to GitHub, right, you're publicizing your stuff, you don't upload your .env file. And you can see in our git ignore file, we are telling Git, like, please do not add our .env file, right? And so you can see like we have our Kintone URL, our username, our password, and that view ID, the one that we told you to copy just now, right? And we need to supply those to our code base, and then that will basically allow our code to talk to our database. So what you're going to do is you're going to copy your .env.example file. Do not delete the file. Which custom view am I supposed to be showing? The timeline view, please. So you need to supply that information to your .env file. Where can you get this information? Your base URL, example.kintone.com. If you look up here, you can see that I'm on devevents.kintone.com. That's right, it's your subdomain ID. So just replace example with dev events or whatever your subdomain ID was. If yours was like my Kintone ID or my Kintone sub, then it would just be my Kintone sub.kintone.com, for example. Your username is probably going to be your email unless you've already changed it in the admin settings. And then your password is going to be your password. Please make sure that you've typed this in correctly. Otherwise, your uploads will fail later, and then we'll all have fun debugging it. I know everyone's, oh yeah, type in the password, easy peasy. It happens so often. We'll be debugging, and I'll be like, oh, oops, I typed in my password wrong. It will happen to you eventually. So like your Kintone password right here will be my password 123, and then your view ID. This is the view ID that we told you to copy. If you're like, oops, I forgot to copy it, right over here, cogwheel, views, my timeline view, you can click on edit, and this view ID right here, okay? And then save. Always make sure you just save and update. So I hope everyone can get their .env set up correctly. And then one other thing, like that when we're going to be uploading our scripts, we need to tell our Kintone Customize Uploader tool, if you manage to install it, where our JavaScript needs to be uploaded to, which database does it need to be, which app does it need to be on, like that. And you can see that we've made quite a few apps. If you click on the app that you want to upload to, Presidents, this is app 53 for me. If this is your first ever Kintone database, yours will probably be 1, so check that out. And right here, where it says app, change this to 1, the customize-manifest.json. This customize-manifest.json is not necessary for our code, so to speak. This is for our Kintone Customize Uploader, which helps upload our code into our database. If you had trouble installing Kintone Customize Uploader and you're going to be uploading manually later on, you don't necessarily need to do this, but this is just part of Kintone Customize Uploader. You need to tell it which database it needs to go to. So yours is probably 1. Mine was app number 53. You can see it up here in the URL. I wish I could make this text larger, but it doesn't follow my Zoom settings at all for whatever reason. Cool. And once you have finished this, we are done connecting our database to our React app, and we are ready to get started coding as well. So when you are ready to dive into the code here, I'll do a very quick kind of explanation of the code base real quick, and then we'll get into our JavaScript, right? So if you're ever like, wow, I'm lost and I cannot get this to work, we have the completed code base right here. And so you can always check that out later at your own, and you can compare it to your own. You can also use it as a base to start off from. We also have here, we have our source file like that. We have index.html, and this is a React thing, right? And you'll notice right up here, div id equals root / div. This is where we are injecting our React app. And so our React app is looking for this root div, and it's going to like jam a bunch of JavaScript up in there basically, right? We have our Index.js. This is where we're going to be coding later on. We have some basic styling. If you want to do that, it would be applied here. We don't need any styling because amCharts will be handling all of like the visual part of it. So we don't really need any custom CSS, but you could if you wanted to. And yeah, we have our .ems, we have our getignore, customize manifest, we have our license, we have our packages. And you can, in our packages that we are working with today, we have a lot that'll help like our JavaScript code into easily uploaded, minified JavaScript. You can see that we have React in here as well. And then we also have our amCharts dependency, which is what's going to be making our chart actually for us, which is awesome. And it's always good to know what we're working with. I'm going to show you real quick like what amCharts is like. Yep. So quick dive into amCharts. amCharts is a really popular JavaScript data visualization library, and it's really easy to use, and it can make a lot of really pretty data visualizations really easily for you. And that's why we chose it for this workshop. They're not related to Kintone at all. You can use them with any kind of data source, so it's not our product or anything like that. And they make a bunch of cool stuff. amCharts recently came out with amCharts 5 like that, and amCharts 5 is a conceptually different library from amCharts 4. And basically what they changed about it, amCharts 5 uses the Canvas API, which is a very fancy modern way of drawing to the DOM in JavaScript. They reduced the number of ways that you can import data. Basically, you're not allowed to use JSON like that. You are supposed to use JavaScript objects like that, which in your code, a lot of times when you like fetch data from a database, you fetch it as JSON and then like parse the JSON and turn it into an object anyways. So it's usually you're going to be turning things into objects regardless, and I think that's why they stopped supporting JSON as well. But one funny thing, when we were planning out this workshop, right, we were like, yeah, let's do the timeline with the presidents. That one looks fun. And then I think like a week or so later, like they were like, amCharts 5 is out. By the way, the timeline chart is not supported in amCharts 5 yet. Sorry. But we do have a cool stock chart. So like me and Genji were like, ah, like that. But we decided to go on with amCharts 4 anyways. The concepts are going to be almost exactly the same. You're going to create a div, an HTML div that's called like my chart. right? You're going to import the JavaScript up above, or if you're using React, you could do like npm install amCharts and then like import amCharts. We'll be doing that in ours. You tell amCharts, hey, I want to create a timeline chart, and then you feed it some data. Those are the 3 steps that you need to do, right? Getting back to our code, the only place that we're going to be coding today is our Index.js. And let's go through it real quick. And the code file itself is actually long, but the reason why it's long is because we made our chart very pretty. The actual basics of it are quite short, and the way that we supply our data to the chart is quite easy. So getting started with Index.js, please everyone open up Index.js, and you can either watch me or you can go through it yourself. Up at the top, we have our imports. We're doing this in React. It doesn't need to be in React necessarily, but it did make life easier. So we have our React imports up top. We are doing this in React, so we installed charts 4, right, as a dependency. So that's why we did npm install earlier as well, right? So that way we could have access to these in our code. We're just importing amCharts core, the timeline chart, these little pins, they're called bullets, and then some animations, right? And then when you upload JavaScript to Kintone like that, it is best practice to have what's here called an immediately invoked function or an anonymous function. And an immediately invoked function or anonymous function is like a fancy programmer way of saying this function does not have a name in the namespace. Now, what does that mean? If I wanted to define a function, I would go const my function is equal to a function that does this, right? And then I go blah, and then later on I'd be like my function, and I'd run it, right? And why we start out, and we always want to start it with the immediately invoked or anonymous function, is because it's just a safety thing for Kintone. All of our workshops have this like boilerplate code up top, and what it's saying is, okay, when you open this file, immediately do this. And that's what we want, right? We don't want to have to click a button like fire off our function or do anything like that with a immediate like use effect hook in React when we open up our app. Just immediately do this stuff. We have our view ID up here. This is for debugging purposes. So if the view ID does not match, please don't run this code, basically. That's all that we're doing here. And then we have our React app function like that. And this function, we'll go through the contents later, but if you'll notice, like this starts here and it goes all the way down here. You could break this out into different parts if you wanted to, and we'll go through how you might want to refactor later. But here we have our other curly brace, right? After that function, we have our React boilerplate. And this is like what React does often, right? Whenever I was saying like 30 times, like we have to inject our JavaScript into this div ID with root right here. What this is doing right here, const root element, so our root element, look at the document, get this element, this HTML element by ID, look for the one with an ID of root, hint, hint, right? Create a root element with this. This is more React DOM boilerplate, and then in root render our app, right? So this is where our like app is being like injected. It's saying, like, hey, find root, and then basically within that root div, just render this app. And what is app? App is this function right up here, okay? So right up here, we have this object that we've already pre-made for you just because it'd be a pain in the butt to type it out. We have this object or a map called a party color, right? And for each party, which is a string, we've associated another string, which is also a color value. Mine are highlighted like this because I have cool VS Code extensions. Yours might not be. But basically, Democrats are this shade of blue, Democrat Republicans are this shade of green, Federalist Republicans, unaffiliated is a bland gray, and then the Whigs, greatest party ever, are this yellow. And then we'll be logging to the console, Kintone's data, event.records. So how do we get access to this data? And here's part of the cool part about why we're doing this workshop within Kintone entirely. Some of our workshops, we actually don't run them within Kintone. So because we're running this entirely within Kintone this time, we have direct access to this event.records. And what is event.records? Event is the event of us opening this page right here. So every time I like refresh or open this page, it's firing off an event saying like, hey, this person's looking at this page. And the records are all of our data, all of our records for all of our presidents that we have in here, right? We'll be running this JavaScript directly within our Kintone environment. And so we have direct access to our event.records. Some of our others, if you look at them in from now on, or if you've been with us in the past, we run things local, like npm run dev. We set up our own server, go to localhost, and we use our Kintone database as a web API database, right? So we like fetch our data first. So if you were going to remake this so you could show it off in like localhost or even pay for hosting in like mycoolpresidentialtimeline.com, you would first have to fetch this data from your database. So just keep that in mind. Today, because we're in Kintone and we're only existing within Kintone, we have access to these records like president name, president start date, end date. But if you were running this as like a local app, you would need to first with an API fetch your data, and then ent records equals fetch Kintone.getRecords from this URL, right? All right. So retrieve the space div. So here within our Kintone app, we have our div. And so we're just going to get that and make it larger and then give it some styling. You could do this, or you could do this with CSS if you wanted to. And then from here on is some amCharts configuration. And I'm going to go through them. And anyways, everything after this is amCharts configurations. And the reason why I brush through this is because I myself, I don't memorize how to use amCharts, right? And when you get to be a developer and you're learning programming, stuff like that, first you're like, oh yeah, gotta memorize. Okay, so I do amcore create and then blah, 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 where to create it, right? I do not memorize these. I always just look at documentation. And once you start to get experience with programming, you stop memorizing things except for how to quickly write functions and classes, right? And instead you're like, okay, let me open up the amCharts documentation. Oh, they have a get started. Great. That's what I'm going to copy paste. And you look for the features that you want, because there's no way that you could ever memorize all this stuff, or maybe you could. I definitely couldn't. But so what we have here is I've explained what some of these do, and you can play with these values if you want to in your own time. But we're creating a chart, and yeah, here's where we're creating it in that space div that we have earlier. What kind of chart are we making? We're making a serpentine chart, which is basically a bendy timeline chart. This seems like we give it some padding, right? Our serpentine has 5 levels. I guess if we change this, we could make it have more curves like that. So we can make it really bendy if you wanted to. And just a bunch of other configuration, right, for our chart. And we have our dates formatted in year, month, day. Okay, that's cool. And font sizes, stuff like that. Tooltips, yeah, okay. These are all just fancy visual things for amChart. Not terribly hard to understand, but I wouldn't spend time memorizing them like that. So if you hold down, if you hover over these, or if you hover over them and you hold Command or maybe Control on Windows, I'm not sure, you can click on these and check out what types these want. This is all done in TypeScript, which is cool. And this is where we're going to actually be coding here today. So I'm going to go over this quickly, but then we're going to go back to it later when we actually code it. Our chart.data, ooh, that seems important, right? Or the data of our chart is equal to event. Remember, we have access to these events. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be mapping them to our chart.data. And mapping is just a way of taking one object and applying its values to a different object in a certain way. And you can specify what they do. Mapping is a very basic skill in JavaScript. Do not confuse it with the for each loop, for example, like that. For each works on arrays, right? And our mapping is going to be for objects, right? So you can see text is equal to blah, 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 right? That's an object, right? So we'll go through that later, and we'll be spitting that out to the console as well if you want to check out what it looks like. And we have here some other amCharts styling and stuff like that. So our category axis, right? Because charts, they always have axes, right? If you think all the way back to grade school, you have your x-axis, right? And then you have your y-axis, right? So we have to tell amCharts, okay, this is going to be our y-axis, this is going to be our x-axis. And it's boilerplate, we just copy pasted this from their get started, right? We have the stroke array and stroke opacity. Stroke is basically thick outlines around your chart and your bullet points. Where do we align our bullet pins? Very cool. And then so here's where we have our US presidents being pushed in, right? So in our series, right here, we're basically telling, hey, make these curve columns, right? That it's a serpentine chart, and this is all boilerplate. And our data fields, we have our dates like that. So when is our start on our horizontal axis? When is our finish and stuff like that? Category doesn't actually mean anything for us here today. If you wanted to have multiple levels on your chart, for example, you could do that with categories. We're not going to be touching that today, but basically it allows you to vertically overlay different categories on top of each other. So I could have US presidents, and then as one category, and then I could add more data like fashion trends in the United States. And you can see people with top hats go from 1700 to 1900 or something like that. And then more styling stuff, right? That it's just basically visual stuff, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about these. You can play with them later. And the best way to learn this kind of things is just to change something and see how it looks, right? I'm going to skip through a lot of this stuff just because it's really, if I change the text align, okay, you could have it in the middle or you could have it at the start or the end. Okay. Not too interesting, right? We have a scroll bar that uses our animation so we can focus the timeline. This is actually pretty cool, and amCharts just set this up for you automatically. Like I just copy pasted this from their documentation. Don't look down on me for copy pasting. It's the most valuable skill, you know. Yep, we can basically on our y-axis like that, we don't have the ability to click and drag it. So that's cool. And we have an export menu that you can set up with amCharts. So like you can click like export to JSON or like export to a CSV. That's all. You know, so amCharts, like they provide all these like really cool, like convenient tools for you to basically like easily create charts. And if you get really good at manipulating amCharts, then like you can create some really awesome looking things. All right. However, our chart right now is currently empty. And so what we need to do is we need to map our data from all Kintone records. And that's what we're going to do together. So everyone please go to line 68. Like that, you'll see this to do, right? Input Kintone data into the chart. We're going to be mapping through our data, event.records.map. For each record, right, we're going to be calling it rec, and then it's going to have an index. The index is going to be like, which number record is it? So is it president number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? It actually starts with 0, but we're going to be using our record data like that, and how we type it out right here. So we need to return what kind of text are we having above. And if we look at like the finished product of our app, right, this text is referring to the president's name up top. So we need to get the president's name in there somehow. So for each record, which we're calling rec right here, the text above the pin bullet, the president's name, is going to be equal to rec dot, and then we have name, right? Very good. But what do we name it, right? If we look in our Kintone app, I forgot to go over this earlier, I'm sorry. First name right here is being called text, right? So it has this field code, and how we can talk about which pieces of data and how we refer to them in our code, we use these things called field codes, right? In the settings of each value in our app right here, your first name has a field code of text, which was default. You could change this, so I could say first, and I forgot to change all these earlier. This first name right here, then we could refer to it in our code. If I were to save, I would do rec.first, and that would be the first name field in our database app right here. But the way that we can do that then is we can refer to this first field, and then we need the value of that field. And this is like the Kintone way of saying, like, hey, in our record, aka president number 1, George Washington, look for the field that's called first. In your app right here, click on the cogwheel, and we have our start date, end date, first name, last name, party, right? This first name, if you click on the settings for it, you can see this field code right here called first, okay? If you do not change this, and if you just want to keep it as text, you could just do uppercase T text. It is code, it is case sensitive because we're dealing with code. Rec.text.value. So whatever you put in there basically is what what your field code is, and you need to refer to it in your code. Unfortunately, code is dumb in that it does not know what you want to do automatically without a lot of work. It does differentiate between uppercase T and lowercase t. But do note that if you don't do this, it's okay. Just in your code, you have to look up what these values are yourself. So either way, you're going to be opening these up, right? For our start date, scroll down to the field code and click start, lowercase s. I like to do lowercase just because it's easier, or camel case if I have multiple words. End date, scroll down to the field code, lowercase e, and save. First name, I think I already did this one. First, yep. Last name, scroll down. Text 0 is what that would have been called, right? Lowercase, last. Party, settings, scroll down the field code. I think you guys get the idea. We'll do wiki, here because Wikipedia link. So when you've changed all of these, make sure to click Save Form and then update your app as well. And so this is, in Kintone, you can tell basically your code, or you can change the names of these field codes to be like, hey, get this column from our database, and you can change it. You could, instead of first, you could do like first name if you wanted to. Just make sure you do the same thing in your code as well. Getting back to our JavaScript map, we have for every record, we need to tell our record. And remember, what is our record? Right here, you can see all records. Record number 46, first name Joe, last name Biden, for example, like that. Okay, how do we refer to these? Here we have our names for our own purposes, like first name, but that's just for us. The field code is lowercase f first, and that's what we designated. So telling each record, okay, for that record, look for the field, aka called first, and then get the value from that field. Don't forget to put .value at the end. That is how our JSON and our API actually like returns our values. If you look at it, and we'll log it out to the console later so you can see, it's first.value right here, right? I'm going to skip over color real quick because it's a little bit more difficult, but right here, rec.start.value, rec.end.value, icon, you know, the icon inside there, rec.image.value. Yeah, we're good. So how do we do color right here? And we already had a little bit of a spoiler alert from Andrew, but that's just because you're so advanced and cool. How do we do color right here? Because your first instinct might be like, oh yeah, these are all the same. Okay, rec.color.value. But if you remember, we don't have a field in our app called color. You could have made this field totally. If in your Kintone app, you could have gone into your settings and we could have done another drop down maybe, or we'll just do a text field for now just because it's faster. And you could have done like party color, right? And then you could have named it color. You don't have to do this, so don't follow along with me here. I'm just saying like that. And then you could have put into this field for every president, like that you could have put in these colors right up here. So a text string like hashtag, right? Or #2502FE, right? That's totally doable. And then you would have access to this color. We didn't do it this way because that's like irrelevant data for our database, right? What is color? And when you think about data structure, right? Like that, and especially as you grow as a developer, right, that you have to think about what data is relevant to what objects, right? Each president doesn't really have a color, right? They have these parties have colors maybe, but like you don't necessarily call it, oh yeah, the blue party, the red party, stuff like that. So what we did instead for this one is we have in our code up here, party color. Remember this object up here that we glossed over, right? We have access to this party color object in our global scope. And for Democrats, we need to get the Democrat key. And then we can get the value from that key right here. So if we look here at party color, this is the advanced JavaScript that I was so happy about earlier. Like that. I don't actually think it's advanced now that I'm talking about it. What you could do right here is we could do party color. And then which part of the party color do we want to get? Okay, if it's Democratic, Republican, Federalist, Republican, unaffiliated, Whig, looking at our data in our database one more time, and okay, that's the same as our party field in our database as well, right? With JavaScript, if you want to get the values basically of one object based on a different variable, what you do is you put it in square brackets after here. Party color dot, and then you do rec.party dot value. There you go, like that. And that's because in our database we did lowercase p party for this party field code earlier, right? And like what this does is says it first resolves this. It says, okay, what the heck is rec.party.value? It resolves that, and that value is going to be Democrat, Republican, Whig, Tory, Democratic, Republican, blah, 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 right? It first resolves that value, and then it's like, okay, party color dot Democrat, and then it'll go, okay, here's Democratic up here, and it'll get the blue color for us, right? It's pretty cool, in my opinion. I don't know. I was really like, it blew my mind, even though I think I learned this like a long time ago. It's just like, when do you use this? And when you are thinking about like how to structure your apps in the future, right? Here, we made a little bit of a sacrifice, right? we could have had the color field in our app just as is, and then gotten like rec.color.value and would have been done. Or you could manage it with code. There's a lot of different things that make a good programmer or a good engineer. You could be like a coding wizard, right? But you make your life a little bit more complicated by having to do slightly more fancy maneuvers, right, in your code. Or, oh, I'm not so good at coding, but I'm really good at data structuring or like app structuring and things like that, right? And you said, okay, in my database, we need a color field. And it's okay to have that in there because we can afford the speed and the data amount that it's going to send. So there's lots of different ways to be like a really good engineer, in my opinion. Moment of truth, everyone. We are going to upload our code to our Kintone environment and see what's going to happen right here, right? npm run build, and you can see right here that it's going to build out our JavaScript, and that's what Webpack is doing. Then afterwards, npm run upload. There we go, mine's working. And then you can see right here that our upload has worked. Pretty cool. And let's check it out online. And then once I check out mine, then I'll troubleshoot with you guys. Go to the timeline view. Oh, I don't see anything. So we have our data right there. And then in our event.records as well, it's being logged out right there. So that's totally normal. So looking at our code right here, we have our rec.first.value, our party color, rec.start.value. I think the field name for image is link, not image. I'm going to blindly trust you. Let's check it out. npm run build one more time, and then npm run upload. Oh, hey, cool. Thank you. Did I mess up my field codes? Yeah, probably. Image URL, link. Yeah, very good job. But so let's see. We're going to go through some debugging stuff like that. But basically, like mine worked. All right, first of all, I know it's elementary, but like double check your field codes. I made a mistake with mine today. It happens all the time. So go back into your app, click on that cogwheel, make sure that start date is lowercase s start, things like that. And then when you do it, always click update app every time. I always forget it. How do I get it to show all presidents? So if you, in your app right here, if you want to show in your, where is it? You could do a number per page right here. I have mine set to 60. Someone set that for me, maybe. That's the default. Yeah. So you can show more or less as you want, and it'll show you the number of records per page. Our GitHub repository has this huge list of common problems as well that I've been ignoring this whole time. Like that. Thank you, everybody. Ooh. I'll see you, everybody, later. Talk to us on the forums, and I'll see you for the AI workshop next time. It's going to be fun. I promise. Bye, everybody. Goodbye.